Hey, everybody, welcome to Facebook Live. This is your Facebook friend, Cedric Alexander, kicking it live here today on a Sunday afternoon in Pensacola, Florida, in my own backyard, to be honest with you. But I'm here, and we're going to have some serious conversation about this whole COVID-19 thing and what's going on in your state, across the country. And I have some thoughts about it. But more importantly, I got my man with me, Joey Jackson, the number one stunner. You see him all the time on CNN. Big Money Joey. His money's so long he had to move to Long Island, New York. But that's my man. And we've done a lot of work together over the last number of years. Love the brother to death. And he's a true brother, got a lot to say. And he and I going to kick it for a little while on this whole Facebook Live thing. And just want everybody to tune in. And if you have questions or comments, shoot them over. But we're going to keep it real. We're going to just be like two regular guys, because this whole COVID piece has really changed the way in which how we think, and feel about things in this country and each other. So, but anyway, I want to pass it on to my man Joey so we can just kick it a little bit. Joey, go ahead, man.
Indeed. Doctor, good to be with you. So just a couple of things. Number one, certainly listen, we know that people are out there and hurting in terrible ways. To those of you, of course, who have lost a loved one due to COVID, understand that we're with you and praying for you and knowing that, hopefully that person's legacy continues through you and the fine work that you do moving forward. To those who are sick, obviously, we want you to get better and better soon. We're pushing for you. We love you. And we just want to have a conversation surrounding this COVID and the way it's changing our life and altering what we do. And I'm glad to be having it with Dr. Alexander, Cedric Alexander. We've known each other for a long time. One of the best men you will ever meet in your life. He's done tremendous things. You should know he was the deputy mayor of Rochester, New York, which is upstate New York. So certainly no stranger to New York and what we go through here. He was the chief of police in DeKalb County in Georgia. Just a tremendous background. I think he's done some stuff in Dallas with the TSA. Everybody knows TSA and what's going on there. So no better person really to tackle this issue with and really to join you this afternoon. And we just figured we would collaborate and have a discussion. And just as if we were speaking on the phone, as we do. And as we talked on the phone and as we've been suffering through this together, just develop this idea of, hey, let's just bring this out. Our conversation certainly could be of some value to everyone else. And we wanted to go through a number of topics today. And the first topic that we're going to start off with is the issue, I think, on everyone's mind, and that is the reopening of states. And we know, and I'll get Cedric's point of view and throw it to him momentarily, but we know that there's a different point of view, right, as to different states opening. Here in New York, we don't expect to be open for a while. The governor has said about May 15th or so, but that's predicated, of course, upon what the state's going through. There have been, everyone knows, about 54,000 people have died throughout the country. New York, of course, being the hardest hit, and therefore it's anticipated that we would open later. Some states like Georgia, they're opened already. Oklahoma getting online, Texas getting online, many other states moving into the reopening phase. And so the real issue is it too soon? And to address that issue as to whether it's too soon to open, I turn it to my brother and dear friend, the Dr. Cedric Alexander, to give us his thoughts on that.
Thank you, Joey. That's very nice of you. Look here. Here's my thoughts about it. And because it's a real tough dilemma. Someone who's been working in government pretty much all their career and all the challenges that we know are associated with being leaders in government, I can only imagine what it must be like for governors in each of the 50 states in this country. It's got to be a tough dilemma for them, merely because of this. They have a dual responsibility. Their responsibility as governors is to keep their people in their state safe. That is hugely important. But at the same time, we live in a democracy. We live in a country that is based on capitalism, and where people have the ability to open businesses, to make money, to do everything that they need to do to make us the great and strong nation that we're continuing trying to be every day. But we got to have businesses open, and to have businesses open when you're up against an invisible virus such as COVID-19, it becomes a real challenge. So you're going to hear in some states where governors, in particular in many of the southern states across the country, they're more apt to be more relaxed, to begin gradually letting people go back to work. But the real challenge is, Joey, when is it really time to go back? That becomes the real question. So I put myself in the position of a governor. I want to make sure that people in my state are well taken care of as we listen to the science, review the data. We've seen the upsurge. We see a flattening in some parts of the country, but every state and every part of the country is very different. So what we have to begin to think about, we can't necessarily think about it wholly. If you're doing one thing in New York, I'm doing another thing here in Florida, it may be merely be because based on the science, I'm in a much different place than you are, as the governor here in Florida reported not very long ago. But at the same time, we're also talking about a virus, if we're not careful, that could reemerge and be more deadly and devastating than what is currently being. And that's the huge dilemma.
Yeah.
So for some people to say, well, it's wrong for the governors to open up the state, the flip side of that, Joey, also becomes we have to have businesses open, but how do we do it in a methodical way? So I'm going to use, what comes first to mind to me is a number of cities, Atlanta being one. Georgia opened up here on Friday. And we see people rushing out to barber salons, to beauty salons, to spas, to gyms. And it's almost very scary because if the state says, yes, let's open these businesses up, are you individually taking some responsibility for yourself when you have your mayor in Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, who is saying, hey guys,
stay home.
Hold up for a minute, stay home. She cares about you. She's concerned about your welfare. She may not be lining up with her governor. So you listen to both points of views. But for me personally, you can lead me to the edge of the cliff, Joey, but it don't mean I'm going to jump off of it. So
right.
You open up your stores, but it don't mean I got to go in them. What we need to do is to allow our states to open methodically, carefully, planfully. And at the same time, we as individuals, Joey, we also have the responsibility of making sure that we're listening to the news, we're listening to the data that's being reported to us every day, so that as our government, particularly your local government, because that's who's on the ground with you, your local government, listen to what they're saying. Because if this thing resurfaces as a result of this, then yes, it's going to be a big challenge for us all. But at the same time, we need to begin to very slowly, very carefully open these states up as well. That is hugely important for the health and welfare of this nation, because we just can't stay shut down. But at the same time, we have to move very, very cautiously.
So I get it, and I agree and I disagree. So here's my point of contention. Now, I know and I recognize that people are suffering throughout this country, and certainly we're about capitalism, we're about making our money, we're about moving forward, we're about doing all we can do to enrich ourselves, to uplift ourselves, and to be as much as we can be from an economic perspective. But I want to go back to the point that you raised, Cedric, which is a very good one, and this is my point of disagreement. The fact is that the first obligation of any executive throughout any state is the safety of its people. Just like on a national level, the first obligation of the president is the safety and security of the people. So I get that people want to go and they've got to make their money, whether they're in barbershops or salons or nail places or movie theaters or gyms or restaurants. People want to make their money. They have to, right? Unemployment record numbers. I get it. But I think we need to exercise caution. And in exercising caution, I just think it's too soon. When you look at a place like Georgia and you got people that are running out everywhere because of the fact that it's opened up, I just think that it endangers the citizens. Now, I understand that ultimately it's going to come down to an individual choice. We as people make our own decisions. No matter what the president says, no matter what the governor of New York, of Georgia, of Oklahoma, of Texas, of New Jersey tells me, I can make my own decision. But here's the point, Doctor, and this is the point I think is very important. We are directed and in large measure guided by what our officials tell us. So you are, by implication, implicitly giving the head nod that it's safe if you're opening up a state. And so if you're opening up the state, what you're telling me is the executive that it's okay that I go out. But what if it's not okay? So yes, we are going to come to a time where people need, of course, we need money. We need to move forward. We need to pay our bills and our mortgages and food and everything else we need. But what good is it to have money if you're dead and you can't spend it? So I think that we have to exercise caution. And it concerns me greatly when in a state like Georgia, against the CDC national guidelines, you open up your state. What also concerns me is this has become a red versus blue issue. It seems that governors throughout the country who happen to be Republican, right, not looking to get politics involved here, but I have to because this is the reality. I'm speaking facts. And on a factual matter, you have Republican governors who say, open up. Why? Because there's an economic imperative to open up, because their business friends are calling them saying, I'm starving, open the damn state. And then you have Democratic governors who are saying, look, exercise caution. Even the example you mentioned in Georgia. Georgia has a Republican governor who says, go ahead, go out, you're open. The mayor, however, of Atlanta is Democratic, and she's saying, hold the phone, everyone. Don't listen to your governor. It shouldn't be red versus blue. It should be where society, we need to protect each other, we need to respect each other, and we need to social distance, and we need to slow down with regard to opening up business. Last point. The bottom line is that I think the federal government, in conjunction, the president with Congress, with the stimulus, I know the stimulus payments are not enough. I get it. I know that the Small Business Administration with the small business loans are not enough. I get it. I understand people are starving. I get it. But we're starving, but we're alive. And so all I say to you on the issue of should we open versus close is we need an appropriate balance. We need a balance that recognizes that people need to make a living, but people need to be alive. And so therefore, I think the first imperative is to keep people safe. I think you go a couple of extra weeks, it's not going to kill anybody. Then you open up the states, then we get economic activity. And it's at that point that I think the appropriate balance is struck, that we could go about living our lives and that people operate with safety, security, and in an economically more advantageous position. And that's what I say, Doc, on that issue.
Well, you said a lot. I agree with you on some of that, Joy, but I'm going to push back still a little bit. I live in one of these red states, and particularly here in Northwest Florida, where we have beaches, we have restaurants, we have a whole industry that is dependent upon people being able to frequent their where they are. You know, that is just what we do here, as in many other parts of the state. But we have a governor who I think has really been quite responsible. He's following the science. He's a Republican, but he's following the science.
Wait a minute.
That's very slow and methodical about in terms of this. Our beaches are still closed here.
Okay.
Not in Jacksonville, but in the rest of the state, it is. So I think at some point, yes, we got to open these businesses back up. And I think essentially you and I are saying the same thing. Okay. But what I'm more inclined to feel that it does come down to a responsible individual taking responsibility for themselves. If the governor opens up the beach tomorrow here in Pensacola, whether I decide to go or not is going to be dependent upon me. It's going to be dependent upon me. No one, me, Joey.
Yes.
And if I feel living here with my 86-year-old mother, whose health has some health that can be easily compromised, I have to consider the fact if that's the best thing for me to do. Everybody's situation is going to be different. But at the end of the day, for all of this, I think for all of us, we have to step back and take some responsibility, because as these states open up, and they will continue to open up, because the country can't take this beating of being closed too long. And at the same time, we cannot reinfect ourselves because it becomes gradually worse.
That's the issue.
We are saying the same thing, my brother. And I think we need to move on to something else.
One last thing, because I know you like the last word. Not that you need it, because you hammer me enough. But here's the issue, okay? The issue is, number one, your governor, which is problematic to me, and I don't want to single out people. I don't want to make it political. And I agree, as someone aptly said, that our health is neither red nor blue. I get that, right? But your governor has completely disregarded CDC guidelines. And when you have the president of the United States saying, right, who I disagree with on just about everything, saying that the governor acted too soon. Wow, that is really something. You don't disregard the guidance. The second thing, and I don't want to be repetitive, but it bears repeating. Yes, we all have individual responsibility. Yes, we all have free will. No, we can't be told what to do. But we depend upon government officials to lead us. We depend upon those in positions of authorities to give us proper information so that we can make adequate decisions. And when you open something up, people are going to go to it. That's just the bottom line. And you are implicitly telling me that it's fine. And I think that that is a wrong thing to do. And so I say to everybody, yes, you know what? We want to get our paychecks rolling. We want our clientele to come back. We want things to be as it was, which it will never be, but we'll get into that later on in the show, fine doctor. But the fact of the matter is, I think you have to strike an appropriate balancing test to go slowly and move it with ease because, to your point, okay, which is a very good one, you don't want there to be another wave. If you open up too soon and we go out and we all get sick again and we got to do this thing over, then what do we do? And so therefore, let's just exercise some caution. I'll end this on that, and then you can have the last word, Doc, but I'll end it on this, and I'll say this. Look, yes, all of you do what is best for you at the end of the day. I just am concerned that you be safe, that your families be safe, that you be secure, and that ultimately my wishes are that you stay healthy and make your money, but the money will be there. Money comes, money goes. There's only one Dr. Cedric Alexander. And God bless your 83-year-old mom, who you have the privilege and pleasure of spending time there with in Florida during this time. And I think it gives all of us an opportunity to reconnect with our families, our loved ones, you know, to show our support for them and to help them and assist them and to love them more. But the reality is, let us just go slow. And I think slow is the way to go. To you, Doc. We have some technical difficulties as we cannot hear the fine doctor speaking. But as we don't hear him speaking and as we do hear him speaking, we're going to address another issue and we're going to move on to an issue of tracing. So, Doc, if you can hear me, say yes. If you can't, I will take command. Can you hear me, doctor? All right. So, as the doctor goes up and he tries to address his audio, let me just say this. One of the issues, as you see there, is has Big Brother gone too far? And here's the issue with that. What we want to address now in pivoting from this whole issue of whether you open up the state, whether you don't open up the state, is an issue of tracing. There has to be a way in order to monitor and determine how people are getting this COVID, when they got it, who they were in contact with, where they were last, where they were yesterday, the day before, the week before, so that they can better identify what's happening. And there are systems in place. We know that Google and Apple are getting involved into the mix with regard to giving information that would better allow us to track and trace people's movements. And so then the issue then becomes whether that tracking is proper, whether it's appropriate, or has Big Brother gone too far? What's next if we allow them to track our movements of where we were today, where we were last hour, yesterday, last week, last month? When is enough enough? And so the issue comes down to an issue of privacy over an issue of security. And so now we'll see if the doctor has come back with us, and if he is, and if he could hear me. But I guess the question then becomes whether this tracing, should there be limitations on the tracing? Should we respect people's privacy, or should we just allow the tracing to occur so that we can eradicate this disease irrespective of people's privacy? What say you, doctor? Still can't hear the doctor. Still can't hear the doctor. But as he gets it sorted out, and he's always got a lot of good things to say, and so therefore, I look forward to him figuring out his audio and being back with us. But it raises a very interesting concern. And that concern is, you know, I know you always have groups, and, you know, God bless the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, for keeping us safe, keeping us secure, making sure that our rights are not stampled upon, putting people in check who try to stample on those rights. And an ACLU is an organization, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. I think they're about individual privacy and liberty. And certainly they have a lot to say about the issue. But the issue here is going to be a Fourth Amendment one, right? Don't want to get too legalistic on this, but I do want to explain. Fourth Amendment relates to searches and seizures. to what extent should the government be able to search and seize my information, right, without any kind of probable cause? Well, I think in a time like this, things are a bit different. And I'm one, believe me, as I defend, or at least attempt to the best of my ability to defend the interest and rights of people, on a daily basis, even with COVID-19, doing it via Zoom. Courts have gone virtual, client meetings have gone virtual, things that are being dealt with for clients have gone virtual. The fact of the matter is as we look at Richard Clark, which we'll get to, the bottom line is that, look, we have to strike the appropriate balance. And in due regard to people's individual rights and individual freedoms and individual liberties, don't we want just the ability for government to be able to trace and track our information to some degree, right? I mean, there has to be limitations on what they do. We can't give them every bit of information. But I think in this day and age where we're going through what we're going through, there has to be less of a right to privacy, and I think more of a right so that we can eradicate this disease. Doc, are you up and popping yet? Doctor's still not up and popping. Oh well. He will. We'll get him there soon. He still lost his audio, but on that issue again, let me say this on the issue of Big Brother. All right. And now, what is a Facebook Live? What is anything live if you don't have little glitches and issues, etc.? And that's the power of live TV. That's the power of Facebook Live. But in any event, as I mentioned, I'm one that protects the privacy and the security and the individual liberties of one on a daily basis. People shouldn't be searched without a basis. People shouldn't be stopped without a basis. People shouldn't be touched without a basis. People shouldn't be arrested without a basis. The question that I'm posing here is, to what extent should that be lessened when we're dealing with a pandemic? To what extent should that be lessened when we're dealing with a public health emergency? Now, here's the other issue that comes up. Even though it's a public health emergency, this becomes a slippery slope, and let me express what I'm speaking of. The problem is, although I am for, right, a tad bit of a reduction in privacy if it can save a life, right? I am for it, to be clear. A tad bit of a reduction in my private security interests, if it's going to save a life, it's a slippery slope. Because now if you will let the government in this context get more information, right, if you allow the government in this context to not respect the Fourth Amendment and unreasonable searches and seizures, if you allow the government to take just a little bit more information here, to what extent tomorrow would there not be something else where they say that, well, it's a public health concern and therefore we want it? Well, it affects people, other people, so therefore we want it. And so we just have to be very careful, as I'm saying. While we want to allow government to eradicate this disease, we want the ability for government to do so in a way that doesn't stample on our rights. So Carol says that there is a balance. HIPAA emphasizes confidentiality, but was also created to allow for coordination of care and does not eliminate the duty to warn. I agree with that to some degree, but HIPAA, as we know, those are laws which protect certainly our medical information. And in protecting our medical information, I think the doctor's back. We have to, in protecting that medical information, authorize, right, that medical information to be released. In the context of tracing, though, are we giving that authorization, or is the government just getting that information from third parties like Apple and Google? Doctor, are you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
I hear you loudly and clearly. You know what? I miss you, man. I
tell you, Joe. You know how to keep a show going, man. I would just sit back listening to you. I'm like, okay, this is real. I like
now this. I want to listen to you.
Well, let me say this about Big Brother, Big Sister. Your government, our government, has a responsibility to keep people safe. What we're doing right now is very unprecedented. This time that we're in with this virus, correct? It is hugely unprecedented. So it means that we're going to have to make some decisions in the middle of this battle that we normally would take time to give more consideration to. Contact tracing is hugely important, because if someone's been tested and they tested positive, then we need to be able to track that person, to be able to see where they're going, what they're doing, who they're coming in contact with, so that others can be notified, so that they themselves can get the testing or whatever treatment that may be needed. We just can't randomly move around especially when we don't know what our particular issue or challenge may happen to be. So I think it's important that big brother, big sister play a huge role in this. I just think it's hugely important that they do. And we have to give them an opportunity sometimes to make the decisions that's in the best interest of all of us, even if we do not know it. So we're trying to survive this. We're trying to get through this, Joey. And times are very difficult. I know they're very challenging for everyone, but we just cannot continue to do what we're doing and not be able to track these people once they are tested in our government or in our system.
So I guess the question for that would be to me, and I'm in large measure with you on this one, Doc, with one exception. So yeah, we want to trace people who are sick because it saves other people's lives. And I'm one that believes, you know, if it's a life and death issue, particularly if it's a societal life and death issue, 54,000 people dead throughout the country, that's a problem. And New York, boy, we know it more than anyone. As we listen to our governor, who, by the way, let me give a shout out. This man has taken charge, and he has, you know, again, I don't want to bring politics into it, nor has he. But this guy literally briefs us every day on the issues. He's very cautious. He's concerned. He's putting people first. He understands and gets, in my view, that businesses have to survive, but I think he wants people to survive safely. And so all I'm saying, but getting back to the issue, right, I just wanted to give that shout out because he's doing phenomenal work. The guy's working 7 days a week, I don't know how many hours a day, trying to come up with innovative and creative solutions to deal with the safety of people. And ultimately, we'll be back open. But I thank goodness for his leadership. He's risen to the occasion, and he's done all he could do. But I guess the question I have, Cedric, in the last remaining minutes for this topic, and that's all I have, is listen, I get people are sick, and people who are sick, we want to trace them because we could save someone else. But should there not be limits or an appropriate balance to what you can do? Shouldn't there be some type of limitation to what the government could do, or should we just allow the government without restriction to just trace them because they're sick and that's it? Google, give the information. Apple, give the information. What balance do you put there?
No, I certainly think there has to be some conversation in our government at all levels of government around it. I certainly agree with you. It should not just be free willy. But unfortunately, many people in our communities and across this country don't trust big brother, big sister. And in that being said, if we're going to move forward with contact tracing, where we are going to get into some Fourth Amendment rights, if you will, right?
Yes.
We have to be very cognizant of the fact that people are going to be very sensitive to it. But this is about life and death. And the other piece is this virus is not going away anytime soon, not at all.
Right.
So we need to be, we need to begin to think about as we go through this very challenging time together, is that we're going to have to make some very tough decisions as it may relates to some of the freedoms that we do have. It's not that we give our freedoms away, but I think the American people need to be part of that conversation.
Yes.
And there's elected representatives need to be part of that conversation where people feel comfortable. Yes, contact tracing is important, but at the same time, where others may not feel very good about that, this is about life and death. And this is about being a leader and taking and making tough decisions. And you know it, Joey, the role that you play, you have to make very tough decisions sometimes around the care of your clients.
Absolutely.
And I have to make, or have had in the past, to make very tough decisions as it relates to the public safety of people.
Right.
And they were not always popular.
That's right.
But those are decisions we sometimes often have to make.
I'm with you, Doc. Very well said. We could agree on that. I just want to give a shout out to Cheryl DeWitt, who said something that cannot be overlooked on the issue of big brother and big sister, Cedric. And what she said was, big brother and big sister should be working on a cure and a vaccine. So let them spend their time and effort doing that. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I think that that's an important consideration. And may we have one and have one soon. And Cheryl DeWitt, that is a brilliant comment to make. We're hoping that something happens because people certainly need, a vaccine and for this to be addressed. And so I want to go to another issue, Cedric, and that issue is to address what the new normal looks like. You know, when you look back and you hearken back to the issue of 9/11, for example, You remember the days prior to 9/11 where we'd go in an airport, we would just go through and life was as it was. After 9/11, you know, it's almost a strip search. You know, I'm being facetious a little bit, but certainly, you know, we go to the airport and I know about all those TSA things and Clear and these other mechanisms where you can get through quicker, but you're taking your shoes off, your laptop's out, this, that, the other thing. And, you know, we look at this discussion, and I'm the law guy, you're the order guy, law and order, right? And that's why, you know, I'm not going backwards, but just to make by analogy, that's why I'm looking, hey, Fourth Amendment, right? That's the legal thing as law. But the order is, hey, you know, how specifically should we do that? How does that look like with tracing? But back to this issue, and that is, what does the world look like now, Cedric? What is the world in this post-COVID era, excuse me, what does it look like? Am I going to be able to shake hands and give a brother hug to, you know, my good friends? Am I going to be able to hug, you know, people? Am I going to be able to have clients in the office or in the conference room? Am I going to be able to, you know, just free willy-nilly go into the studio for headline news, HLN and CNN? Am I like, what in your view is this new era? Are we going to have restaurants where, look, in Manhattan, you climb into a restaurant, you're like this trying to eat your dinner, right? How, in your view, do we have a safe world? And how does post-COVID, what does that post-COVID world, how can we really get on board with that? What say you?
Well, I just demonstrated that. I came from outside and came inside because I need to make some adjustments. So sometimes it's just as simple as that, Joey. Look, on the real, we live in a very challenging time. No, things are going to be different for a while, probably up until the point where a vaccine or some treatment regimen is in place where we can go back to the things we normally go back to. But I just think overall in this country, we're going to see clear, different changes about the way that we have interacted and done business, even when a vaccine is found. And that's 12 to 18 months out, potentially, as it's typically being reported. So we're going to have to be much more sanitation minded in terms of washing our hands, in terms of covering our mouths when we cough. We're going to have to be much more conscious about just our overall public health. And I think it's a wake-up call for all of us. So we're going to see some significant changes. We're going to see a difference in the way that people interact. But I think us being human beings, the human beings and people that we are made to be in contact with people. We are made to have relationships with people. We're made to be able to have, to be able to care about each other, to be touching each other, to be hugging and caressing and helping people through difficult times. Imagine right now, your closest friend who may have some significant loss of whatever in their life, and you can't embrace them, you can't hold them, you can't make them feel comfortable because of this time that we live in. So it becomes very tough for all of us. So I just want us to begin to think about, even right now, people are such a hurry for things to go back to normal. There will be a certain level of normalcy, which it will go back to, but there's also going to be a certain level of new norms that we're going to acquire. Whoever imagined before 9/11 we'd be taking our shoes off at the airport and emptying our pockets and almost undressing, if you will. But that's where we are. And we're going to be in a very different place after this. But we also have an opportunity to be a much better nation after this as well. Because we know that as we go through this together, and when people go through something together, it should not separate them by political party. It should bring everyone else together. And don't always look for others to set that example for you. We have to be willing to set that example for each other and for ourselves and for our families, for our friends and our neighbors. That is really what's important for us. But as we go through this period we're going through now, Joey, and even in cities that are opening up, and some people are recklessly going out, re-engaging themselves, they need to be very careful. You know, someone sent me some pictures yesterday from Atlanta. When they opened up on Friday, you had strings of people wrapped around the business, or wrapped around the store trying to get their hair done or trying to get into a beauty supply place or whatever the case may happen to be. And I'm not picking on Atlanta because I also got some footage from Chicago of a house party last night
Yeah, I saw
where
that.
it was packed wall to wall. I sent you that.
Yes.
And people
Yes.
got masks, but they don't have them on. They have them around their neck where you don't breathe through your neck.
That's right.
But the whole point of this thing is real. We're going to see some changes and differences. But even if, as your cities open up, even as they open up, what your government is saying to you, yes, you can open up and do business, but listen to what your mayors and your elected officials are saying locally as well. Be very cautious. They may not feel the time is now. Our elected officials can't even get on the same page. But for you and I and the millions of others that are out there, read, take note. That $1,200 you're getting in the check in the mail, keep it in your pocket for a minute. You don't have to go spend it soon as you get it. Where are you going to get your hair done or a haircut? All you're doing is getting casket ready. That's all you're doing.
Wow.
Take your time, be methodical, think about what you're doing, take some responsibility, some personal responsibility. And on top of that, Joey, let's help each other get through this. I don't care whether you're on the right or on the left.
That's right.
We have to help each other get there because there are going to be some clear, significant changes in our culture, our society, and our environment. And we need to start thinking forward. Slow it down. That's what your mayor in Atlanta is telling you. That's what the mayor in Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, is telling you. That's what the mayor here in Pensacola, Florida, Grover Robinson, is telling us. Slow down. Be cautious. Don't make yourself casket ready by going out and get all G'd up. And then where you going? Where you going?
Wow. You know what, Doc? It's always interesting. This is why I love my brother, the doctor, Cedric Alexander, because he tells it as it is. And when you were speaking, my friend Willie there was saying you're getting yourself cremation ready too, and it's funny, but it's not funny. And then of course Ralph Clark was saying that gives us an opportunity to love each other more too. But just to conclude on this point, and you're always so reasonable, and that's why it's always good to be on air with you because we have different points of view. But in those points of view, you're very reasonable and thorough in your explanations, which I appreciate. I know viewers do too. But let me just say this: the bottom line is when I look at the new norm, and something's crackling there, Doc. I'm not sure what it is, but something's crackling on your end. But here's the issue, right? The issue is, when we look at the new norm, does it mean now that we're going to have to wear masks for a certain amount of time, and we're going to have to be out there in public in wearing these masks? And that's not so bad. I gather if we have to wear a mask for a certain amount of time, we can live with it. What do restaurants look like? Is it a situation where restaurants can only do half capacity or a quarter capacity now because of the social distancing issues? What do our schools look like? Do we have less class sizes now? And are those class sizes spread out because of social distancing issues? Do we move to an issue where it's more Zoom oriented and we're learning from home or we're not? What do airports look like with the cramming of people who are there online? What do airplanes look like? Are they transporting less people? It's an interesting thing to have the discussion to the new world that we're really going to be entering into during this time. Are we going to do more things from home? What lessons have we learned from this? Do we have the ability now maybe to advance and even improve in some ways? As opposed to everyone being in a conference room, will we be in our offices, but just linking in because we're talking to each other on a computer, same space, but we're all in our individual space. And so I just think it's going to be very interesting, Doc, as we look at, the future and we look at the world that we're going to really be living in now. And, the thing that I'm concerned about so much being a New Yorker, and it's not totally unique to New York, but it's a concern. And I think we know New York has so many more instances because we're more bunched together. But if you look at it, how do you social distance on a subway? How does that happen where people are literally walking all over each other? How do you social distance on the Long Island Railroad? How do you social distance on the Metro North where you're coming into the city. So there's just so many issues to tackle. We all have to get to work. We're all rushing to get there. Do we all drive? And if so, what effect does that have on pollution issues and other things? And so I just think we're entering a new world. And I just want to, I'll conclude that point and I'll give the last word to you, Doctor, if you need to enter more. But, I agree with you when it comes to issues of embracing people who are in a terrible state of mind, right? For whatever reason, you've lost a loved one. Can I not hug you now to console you? Because you need that. When it comes to seeing the good people that I haven't seen in such a long time, when I travel and I see the doctor, when the doctor comes to New York and you and I have the privilege of getting together and we give that bro hug, it's so good to see you, the bear hug. Can I not do that with you anymore? It's a crazy scenario to think about, but it's real. And it's something that, may change. We've heard Dr. Fauci say that the handshake may become a thing of the past. And I just think, while I recognize and understand the legitimacy of that, I also think it's such a damn shame because that's how we express ourselves. And the final point I'll make, Doc, and I'll turn it over to you, and I know we have much more to discuss, but the final point I make, when you look at these issues and you see during COVID how people were buried, and when they're buried, you have virtual funerals. Wow, who would have thought we would have had a virtual funeral? Is that something or is that something? And when you look at issues of people who are dying in hospitals and they tell your beloved family members, whoa, you can't see your loved one as they're dying. It's just, these are different and trying times, and how we adjust to them, I think is going to make the world of difference. And with that said, Doc, I will yield my time and I will give you the last word on the issue and we'll move on to a couple other things.
Well, I know we're having a little technical issues here. We're going to get this worked out before we do this again, because Joe and I are going to be up next Sunday tackling these issues and what other relevant issues are out there that we think are so important and salient in this time that we live in. Because at the end of the day, I think what me and Joey are trying to do is share some different views, but at the same time, when we listen to each other, we're finding out we're virtually saying the same thing, I believe. Right, Joey?
Yeah, so, but always in a different way. Even when we sit down, we have our power breakfast and our power lunch.
That's right.
You say, hey,
that's right.
And we settle it on C, but we get there.
Yeah, we get there, and you buy breakfast, so it always works out. So we gonna keep doing that.
I gotta let people know. He's right. I buy breakfast, but I only do that because he gets the lunches and dinners. So who wins here? Who wins?
That's right. That's right. What are we off to next? What's next on the agenda?
All right. So listen, we got some rapid fire things to talk about, and I think on the rapid fire thing, what I'll start with is you. And it's basically just agree or disagree. And we talked about this before, but it deals with whether luxury should be free or discounted during this time. And just to introduce this stuff, people are going through economic hardship. And there are a couple of things that really pet peeve me. One pet peeve I have deals with people taking advantage of others, gouging them during their time of need. Look, we're a capitalistic society. I get it. Believe me. I know and understand that people need to make their money. But to gouge people at a time where they need things, to double and triple and quadruple prices because people need things, I just think that's wrong. And the other thing, next to doubling and tripling things, is on the other issue of having some understanding, right? So if I could just, be a little personal about this. So I go on, I won't say which bank, I'm not blowing anybody up. I don't mean to blow anybody up. So I go on to, pay my credit card bill the other day. And so I'm 48 hours late to pay my credit card. And I see that they charge me $39. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Like, are you serious? So, it's really a hold. You have to hold nowadays. You can't get anybody right away. But I called immediately and I said, listen. I know everybody's got to make their money, right? I get it and I understand it. I know that, I'm not asking for anybody's pity or whatever else. We're all going through this. But do you know we're in a pandemic and you're billing me $39 for being 48 hours late for paying my card? Like 2 days. And you're like, and so the point is that for those of you yelling at me, I'm irresponsible. It should have been paid on time. I get it. It should have been. But I just got a lot of other things on my mind at the moment. But I just think in times like this, and they're telling me, well, it's a button, it's preset, and we're preset, and it did it, but we're so sorry, Mr. Jackson, and we'll waive it, and oh, we apologize, but it was preset, we didn't do it. I said, well, why don't you preset it so that you don't stick people with having to pay more than they need to? Don't you know it's a pandemic? Like, what does it do to moral? What does it do to morale to see that? And I just went at it, and I went in on them because I thought it wasn't right. So they waived it. It's all good. It's done. But the fact that they did it in the first place, it just left a bitter taste in my mouth. And so, Doctor, I'll go to you with the issue of during this time, mortgages, should mortgage late fees be waived? Should people have grace periods on car payments? Where do you stand on the issue of during this time cutting people a break?
Well, let me say this. That was a great long introduction, Joey. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna rapid fire real fast back at you. I agree with you 100%. But I think it's also important to remember too that these large corporations, they got to stay afloat. They have their ways of generating revenue, but it is a time that we have to be very sensitive to each other and not be insensitive, as Sandra D. King is mentioning, and she is so correct. Let's be considerate. Let's be proactive. Let's be easy on each other until we get through this real tough time, because this is just a tough time in this country. And we're all are experiencing this, not just in the country, but around the globe. So that $20 you owe me, Joey, I'm going to let you hold off on that for a couple of months longer, man. All right.
Here's the deal. You weren't getting it back anyway, so it wouldn't matter. It's no pandemic, you know?
All right.
So, all right. So the next issue, Doc, comes about with this whole issues of employers and just getting a sense of, there's a legal perspective of this, but just from a practical perspective, we just want to address. Employers now are telling people in some jurisdictions like Georgia, hey, come back to work, come back to work, come back to work, you're good. But if you go back to work and you get sick, now, to what extent should the employer be responsible for that? Just to be clear, from a legal perspective, you can't sue your employer. It's a workers' compensation issue. Employers are immune from suit. But should they be immune if they're bringing you back to work in a time where you shouldn't be working? And then if you don't go back to work, you could get fired. So where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I mean, my thoughts of this, Joey, here again, this is just a very unprecedented time that we live in. And I think that if we allow ourselves to step back and figure out how to deal with these new issues that we're being confronted with, and we really never had to think about before. I don't think there's no one particular answer, Joey. I really don't. I don't think there's not a one particular answer. But what I do believe wholeheartedly in my mind is that if we stop, all of us, and think through what is going to be best for the people, the American people overall, not us individually, but what is best for all of us. And people are going through very challenging times, not just people who are poor, but middle class families are going to a great deal. People are losing their jobs that they may never get back. People may be asked to come back to work, but don't feel safe enough to do so. Look, our frontline heroes, the nurses and doctors who are out there going to work, and we hear and read about cases where they don't have all the proper PPEs that they should need, that they need in order to carry out their job. So at some point, some people may, or some organizations or some institution may be held accountable to that. But I think each case is going to be very, very different based on the circumstances. But as we go through it, we should be focusing more, quite frankly, as to how we're going to beat this virus, as opposed to what some of the legal ramifications may come out of it. The law is there to protect us. That's your area of expertise. But here again, we still have some personal responsibility to take. Look, if I know that I'm gonna go work and I need to work just like anyone else, and I got to go somewhere where I could possibly be exposed to the virus and potentially bring it back home to my family, that is a real tough one, because I need to work and people need to eat, and at some point the bills still need to get paid, and that business owner is trying to stay afloat to take care of his or her family. So it becomes tough for us. but we just do the very best we can under the circumstances that we live in. And I think each one of those cases going forward is going to have to be dealt with differently. But we should not be thinking about doing harm to each other through lawsuits. What we should be thinking about is how do we get through this and beat this virus? We don't need to be enemies amongst each other. We all on the same team in the same fight with an enemy that has killed over 50,000 Americans. Black, white, blue, green, young, old, everybody. So that should be our focus.
I'm with you.
And our primary focus. And how do we get there? How do we do it? We follow what the CDC is saying to us. Let's follow the rules. Wash your hands. That's simple enough. Keep your place disinfected. Keep your butts at home with your families inside. Go in your backyard. Go in your front yard. Wave at your neighbor across the street. Do all those things. But remember, if we continue to infect each other, we're going to overwhelm our hospitals, which means then we're going to continue to overwhelm our healthcare staff and put everybody at risk. This is a vicious cycle. We know what works. We know social distancing work. But I will say this again. As we begin to open up in this nation, let's do it very carefully. As a nation, yes, we've got to stand up and open up. But we got to be very methodical and pay attention to what your local elected officials are saying to you. But also be able to read and listen to credible news on your own. Not fake news, credible news. And there's a lot of credible news that is out there, and a lot of great journalists who are out there who are giving us the best information that they can via what's coming from our scientists and the data that's being collected, because this is still a very new virus and a lot that we still don't know about. But for all of us as Americans, Joey, we got to get through this together. And I know we got to get ready to wrap this up, but I'll kick it back to you, my friend.
Sure. No, well, we were just, talking about the issue of employer rights and employees' rights during the pandemic. And just from a legal perspective, everybody should know that there are federal guidelines that deal with these issues that OSHA promulgates. And as a result of that, what I'm saying is that there are certain guidelines employers need to follow in order to protect your safety, and you can file complaints against them. But the issue is, by the time the employer tells you to come to work and you say, hey, I'm not coming, I'm not safe, you're fired. What good is it if you have some federal regulation that's out there that protects you when you have no job, and it's not until 6 months later that they're getting to deal with your complaint? So just be careful. The bottom line is that employers hold a lot of cards with regard to mandating that you're back. Just when you go back, be safe, be secure, be sound. And just on the legal issue of nursing homes, which you saw down in the red before, now it's talking about what employers and what rights you have. You saw before, talked about nursing homes. A lot of nursing homes, we know that because of the populations that are in nursing homes, with the older population, they are more susceptible and they're more at risk to this. And as a result, they're dying in disproportionate numbers. And so there's a real imperative to sue nursing homes. But what you're seeing throughout the country is that laws are being imposed to protect nursing homes. It used to be that you just had to establish that a nursing home was negligent and someone died. What does that mean in English? That they were careless, that they didn't meet the minimum standards of care that were necessary to protect the people they're serving. Well, laws are being passed throughout the country, which are making it more difficult to sue nursing homes because of this COVID epidemic, and because of the fact that, they were dealing with a very vulnerable population. And those laws are really saying that unless they were so grossly negligent, or unless they acted in a way that was so unreasonable, you really can't touch them. And I think that's, a head nod to an understanding that there are limitations to what anyone can do. Before going to the very last topic, Doctor, obviously, I know you and I have spoken about this many times, and I just want to say publicly, and we've seen the comments too, the first line responders have been tremendous during this whole process. Doc, I know that your background is in law enforcement, and you've worked in law enforcement in various capacities, certainly being a chief of police, and you've overseen the whole law enforcement issue, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's firefighters, whether it's certainly, our hospital professionals and medical professionals. A shout out to my sister, a nurse, who really has done a tremendous job of putting herself in harm's way. I got a shout out to my mom, of course, because she was a nurse too, and that's the path that my sister followed. But all you medical professionals, people who were serving us, groceries and food, and everyone, the people in the front lines have just done such a tremendous job to keep us healthy and safe during this pandemic. And we love you for doing it, and we're healthier because of you. So I didn't want to speak for you, Doctor. I know you have expressed that in private in our conversations. I think we are of like mind in that regard. But before we get to the very last topic, I'll, turn it over to you if there's anything else you wanted to add to how proud we are of what they've done for us. So
a huge big shout out to all public safety officers out there, our police officers, our firefighters, emergency management, EMTs, 911 operators. They all do such an incredible job in a very difficult time that we are in. And we've had a lot of those same people lose their lives in this fight. And we've lost over 50,000 Americans in this fight. We cannot fight each other on the right and on the left. We got to find a way to lead the American people, lead them with credible information, lead them with a sense of confidence in what we're saying. And that's partly why Joey and I talked about doing what we're doing here this Sunday afternoon. And we're going to be back next Sunday. And as this re-engaging of our community and our businesses and our communities begins to open back up, we're going to continue to talk about it. We're going to follow the data. We're going to listen to what the Dr. Fauci is saying. I would encourage everyone, don't just get your news from somebody else. Check it out for yourself and think about it for yourself and make the decisions that you know are going to be best for you. And to all the young folks that's out there, and some of the older folks as well too, social distancing is a serious thing. So I just think, Joey, that you and I and millions of others across this country who understand the importance of where we are right now as a nation, there's no room for separation. There's no room for infighting.
Right.
We have to listen to the experts, take their advice, because that's the only way we're going to get through this. And as this country begins to open back up this week and in the following weeks to come, which is going to be pretty fast, it becomes important for us to think about where we are, what we're doing, and who we go back home to, because we got to keep ourselves and everyone around us safe. And to the business owners that are out there, I will tell you personally, I want to see your businesses open back up, because I know you put your hard work, blood, sweat, and tears into your business. And you want to see it be able to thrive, and you want to be able to hire employees back that you've come close to and you've learned to like and love, and to have to lay people off. How painful that is to not be able to pay your bills and do the things that so often we've taken for granted. But I think a big part of this is too me being a spiritual person. God is trying to tell us something. So not just in this country, but around the world. And we need to pay attention. We need to listen. And Joey, I think it's important that we come back here next week and we talk about this some more. This is our first show on Facebook Live. And I don't think now, Joey, is a time to stop. I think it's a time to pump this thing up, man, and we pay attention to what's going on out there and keep people encouraged from your perspective, particularly from a law and legal perspective. And for me, having been a lawman most of my life, I like to see things done in order, and that's how we gonna move with that, both in law and with some real sensible order.
Indeed. Well, when we talk about sensible order, you make the most sense, and so that's why I appreciate you so much, Doc. We go a long way back, and we got plenty of great stuff to go. And so, just in conclusion, we're going to get to the very last question, which is going to take only seconds for both the fine doctor and I to answer. And in doing that, I just want to just give a shout out to everybody who's at home doing the best you can for your families, protecting your kids, protecting your children, doing all you can do. I call her my lovely Miss Katja Jackson, who takes such great care of me in every single way. I eat a lot, but I am exercising too, so don't worry about that. But just lights out, just as far as how she's handled this whole thing. And all of you, I'm sure, have people who are special and care about you and have looked after you. But the doctor and I, in concluding this in a few seconds coming down to, I guess the question that we both agree, can we answered really in 2 words, is whether or not, doctor, we should use Lysol or bleach internally in order to cure the coronavirus. And to that, I think, doctor, you say what?
Heck no.
Yeah. So I guess we got it there. But listen, we appreciate you. Thank you for spending some of your time with us on Sunday. We'll be back next Sunday, same time, 3 o'clock. And, we thank you. And, of course, all our behind-the-scenes people, we thank you, too. God bless. Have a great day. Happy Sunday.
God bless you all. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Tune in with us. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to kick it some more. And Joey, thanks for being part of this with me, because I truly believe this is something that the American people hopefully will get something out of as we continue to do this. So thanks to all of you that joined in. I appreciate it. See you later. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Be good.